So what vaccines are trying to do is expose the immune system to a piece of a virus so that the body will mount an immune response. So it recognizes it if it sees it again. So typically a lot of the vaccines we have now use weakened forms of a virus, and many of them use a protein. And in this case, in the coronavirus case, we're all familiar with those spike proteins that are on the edge of the football that we've seen in so many images. So one way is to use this spike protein to elicit an immune response. But some of the new types are mRNA vaccines, and they use the genetic code that codes for that spike protein. So in the end, they do the same thing, but the mRNA ones, they're slightly small. It's a smaller molecule. It's a bit easier to make, although it can be a little delicate. So there are some big advantages to mRNA vaccines. They're much easier to make. One of the downsides, though, is that these long chains of mRNA are quite easily broken. One way to reduce the chance of this happening is to store them at very low temperatures. Now, although there are a couple of mRNA vaccines almost ready, one of them has to be stored even colder than the others. And this boils down to differences between the formulation for how these vaccines are produced. So the global urgency around developing a COVID-19 vaccine is unprecedented, and it will lead to an unprecedented timeline for producing a vaccine. The previous record, if you like, was 4 years for developing a mumps vaccine. But these ones obviously are much more urgent, and so all efforts have been made to condense that timeline. Part of it has been to have overlapping phases of development. So you'll find researchers are recruiting for phase 3 clinical trials while the phase 2 trial is still completing. You've also got regulators involved directly from the beginning, not just getting the data at the end when the trial is finished. So that has helped. And overall, you find that all the resources of agencies, regulators, and companies are being thrown at this. So if you think about it as like painting your house, which might take you weeks or months if you do it by yourself, in this case, you've got a whole crew. Everyone has dropped everything else, focused on this one task for a year, and that is how we've managed to condense these timelines into what will probably be less than 12 months. Most people have a positive view of vaccines. Most of us have the recommended vaccines on time, every time. There is a small minority of people who are anti-vaccine, meaning that they are strongly opposed to the vaccine. And there is a larger minority which would be hesitant. So these are people who understandably have questions about vaccines, about whether they work, whether they're necessary, and about safety. And I think addressing those questions is really important if you want to ensure high levels of acceptance for vaccines. COVID-19 has had quite a big impact on vaccine confidence. The debate online, at least, has become more polarized. We've also seen some of the anti-vaccine groups overlapping and merging with anti-mask protesters, and even mixing with other conspiracy theories around 5G. So there are some quite far-out conspiracies which are frankly incorrect that have linked the rollout of 5G with the pandemic, for example. So I think that the pandemic has made the debate more aggressive, more polarized, and is going to make it a little more difficult to maintain vaccine confidence when the new vaccines arrive against COVID-19. So the WHO speaks of the 3 C's of vaccine hesitancy. These are confidence, complacency, and convenience. So in terms of convenience, vaccines need to be accessible with minimal fuss, easy to get to, no long waiting times. In terms of complacency, the problem is that many of these diseases that are vaccine preventable, like measles or tetanus, are so rarely seen, largely thanks to vaccines. You know, vaccines are a victim of their own success because they have reduced the rates of these diseases to such a low level that even doctors and pharmacists have possibly not seen serious cases of these diseases. And the final piece is confidence. And this is where we were speaking about anti-vaccine groups. But again, anti-vaccine groups are not as important as the kind of hesitant people who just have questions and just need to be satisfied about safety and effectiveness before they go ahead and have the vaccine. So quite a broad range of people could be categorized as being vaccine hesitant. It's not necessarily a question of education or age or knowledge. There are plenty of educated people who have maybe particularly deep expertise in one topic, but who come to the vaccine issue with new questions or even objections to vaccines. In some cases, vaccination or any medical intervention clashes with other political or philosophical beliefs. Maybe it's not compatible with their worldview. So you've got some groups of people who might be libertarian or strongly conservative, and for them it's a question of freedom. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who are more interested in alternative health or green health, natural living, and for them any intervention is perhaps unnecessary. They feel there's no need, we should rely on natural immunity. Scientists will tell you that this is not sufficient to keep these diseases at bay. And then more broadly, and perhaps there's overlap between those two groups, is people who have a general mistrust of authorities, of science, government, industry, and the medical establishment. The good news is that even people who are skeptical about the medical establishment still trust their own GP and their own pharmacist. So there's a real opportunity for providers to make a difference. The important thing to think about when we're communicating about vaccines is that most people who have questions are not anti-vaccine as such. They have questions and they need answers to these questions. In the absence of a good answer to a question that someone has, the vacuum is filled with misinformation. So the key is to target fence sitters or swing voters, if you want to take an electoral analogy. You won't always reach or change the mind of someone who's a really, really strong conviction about vaccines one way or another. But you can reach those who are just hesitant and need a good answer to a question that they have. So on Vaccines Today, we spend a lot of time online on social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, trying to communicate about vaccines and answering people's questions. And we do sometimes come up against anti-vaccine criticism or questions. What's really important is that you're seen to make an honest effort to give an answer, to show that there is an answer. Sometimes the response will come back with a new question, or they won't be satisfied, or they'll keep sharing objections, and maybe they will become aggressive in some cases. When that happens, we try to be as patient as possible and to be seen to make a fair attempt to deal with this with a straight bat. Because the important thing to remember is that your audience is probably not the person who is anti-vaccine and is asking a question. The audience is a third-party viewer who's watching to see how you both deal with this issue, and they will decide who the more credible voice is. Well, vaccine misinformation has been a long-standing problem, but in the COVID-19 era, it has really amplified. However, there is also an unprecedented global effort to push back. So you see national agencies, scientific societies, and also global organizations. The UN has a UN-verified campaign that they're running to help people to recognize misinformation. The WHO is training experts in infodemiology, which is a new level of expertise, but helping people to understand this infodemic, this epidemic of misinformation. So they're equipping people with real skills, the general public, helping them to recognize false information, also helping health authorities to follow rumors, to respond when necessary. So I think one of the positive legacies of the COVID-19 pandemic will be this global effort to address vaccine myths, and my hope is that it is sustained long after the pandemic is history. Well, GPs and community pharmacists are so well placed to address some of the questions people have about COVID-19 vaccines. They see older people, they see people who may have other comorbidities that means they are in risk groups and will be first in line for the COVID-19 vaccine. But GPs and pharmacists themselves, as frontline health workers, are also at the top of the queue. So it's really important that as soon as a GP or pharmacist is happy to have the vaccine and it's available to them, that they take the vaccine. And crucially, they let their patients know. Because the first question a patient will have is, would you do it? Did you do it? And if the answer is yes, I've done it, or yes, my parents have had it, then this is deeply reassuring from a trusted source such as your own healthcare provider.